Late January to February 1944, the western approaches, the stretch of ocean southwest of Ireland, where every Atlantic convoy bound for Britain has to pass through waters still patrolled by German U-boats. 6 small British sloops, none of them much larger than a destroyer and none carrying anything more advanced than the same 300-pound depth charge the Royal Navy had been dropping for years, put to sea on a routine anti-submarine patrol under a captain the Admiralty had, earlier in the war, considered too unremarkable to promote ahead of schedule. Over the following 27 days, this one small group of ships will sink 6 separate U-boats, 3 of them within 16 hours of each other, without losing contact with a single convoy they are protecting. It remains, to this day, one of the most successful anti-submarine patrols carried out by any navy during the entire Second World War. This is the story of Captain Frederic John Walker and the 2nd Escort Group. By early 1944, the Battle of the Atlantic had already passed through its most desperate phase, but German U-boats remained a serious and evolving threat rather than a defeated one. Convoys crossing the Atlantic still faced organized wolf pack attacks, and German engineers were actively fielding new technology to counter improving Allied detection methods, including the schnorkel, a breathing tube that let a U-boat run her diesel engines and recharge her batteries while still mostly submerged, cutting down the time she had to spend fully surfaced and vulnerable to aircraft and radar. Sinking U-boats reliably still required British escort ships to detect a submerged contact using sonar, known in British service as ASDIC, hold that contact through evasive maneuvering, and deliver a depth charge attack accurate enough to do lethal damage, all while the U-boat actively tried to break contact or, worse, turn and attack the escort ship itself. It remained slow, difficult, unglamorous work, and the officers who did it best rarely received the public recognition given to a destroyer captain who sank an enemy battleship in a single afternoon. Frederic John Walker was, for a significant stretch of his career, exactly the kind of officer that description suggests. Competent, but repeatedly passed over for the kind of accelerated promotion given to more conventionally promising officers, to the point that by the late 1930s some in the Navy privately regarded his career as effectively stalled. What changed his trajectory was a single idea he pitched directly to Admiral Sir Max Horton, Commander-in-Chief of Western Approaches Command. Rather than tying escort ships permanently to individual convoys, create a dedicated hunting group, ships whose entire job was to detach from convoy duty, actively pursue submarine contacts, and destroy them, even if that meant leaving a convoy briefly less protected in the short term. Horton approved the idea, and Walker was given command of the 2nd Support Group, later the 2nd Escort Group, 6 Black Swan-class sloops based out of Liverpool, Starling as his flagship, alongside Wild Goose, Woodpecker, Wren, Cygnet, and Kite. None of these ships carried anything unusual in terms of weaponry. What Walker actually brought to the group was a set of new tactical doctrines he had personally developed for using that ordinary weaponry with far greater precision than standard practice allowed. The centerpiece of Walker's method was something that became known as the creeping attack. A conventional depth charge run required an attacking ship to hold sonar contact on a submerged U-boat right up until the moment of the attack. But sonar itself, an active pinging system, effectively announced the attacker's approach to the target below, giving the U-boat's own hydrophone operators clear warning to take evasive action at the critical last second. Walker's creeping attack split the job between 2 ships. One vessel held ASDIC contact from several hundred yards back, tracking the U-boat's course and speed and radioing continuous course corrections to a second ship, which crept forward at very slow speed with her own sonar switched off entirely, invisible to the U-boat's listening gear, guided and blind by voice instructions alone until she was positioned directly overhead. Only then would she release a full, tightly concentrated pattern of depth charges with no warning ping to give the submarine below any chance to maneuver clear in the final seconds. It was a genuinely novel piece of teamwork, built entirely around timing, radio discipline, and trust between 2 separate ship's crews, rather than any new piece of hardware. If you're finding this look at how ordinary depth charges, used differently, became a war-winning tactic interesting, subscribing helps the channel keep telling stories like this properly. The patrol that made Walker's reputation ran from the 31st of January to the 26th of February, 1944, 27 days at sea in the western approaches. It opened on the very first day, when Wild Goose picked up and destroyed U-592 inches of fast, straightforward action. On the 8th of February, Woodpecker engaged U-762, and her opening salvo of 22 depth charges proved so devastatingly accurate that no follow-up attack was needed at all, prompting Walker to send Woodpecker's captain a signal that became one of the most quoted lines of his career, inviting him over to come and look at the mess he had made. The following day, the 9th of February, became the defining stretch of the entire patrol. Within roughly 16 hours of Woodpecker's kill the previous evening, the group destroyed 2 further U-boats, U-238 and U-734, both taken down using coordinated creeping attacks between multiple ships working in sequence, bringing the running total to 3 kills inside a single 16-hour window. 2 days later, on the 11th of February, U-424 was located and sunk. On the 19th of February, the group caught and destroyed U-264, notable as one of the first German submarines fitted with the new Schnorkel breathing system, proof that even Germany's latest countermeasure against Allied detection had not been enough to escape Walker's tactics. 6 confirmed kills, inside less than 4 weeks, by a single group of 6 lightly armed sloops. The patrol was not without cost. On the 20th of February, near the end of the same cruise, HMS Woodpecker, the ship that had delivered one of the patrol's cleanest kills less than 2 weeks earlier, was herself torpedoed by a German U-boat. She stayed afloat and under tow for several days afterward, her entire crew saved, before finally sinking on the 27th of February while still being brought home. Across the wider 4-week period in which Walker's patrol took place, a total of 11 U-boats were destroyed throughout the western approaches, 6 of them, more than half, credited directly to Walker's 6 sloops, while 12 large Atlantic convoys passed through the same stretch of ocean safely during the same window. Undisturbed by the wolf packs, the 2nd Escort Group was actively hunting down instead of merely screening against. Over the full course of the war, the 2nd Escort Group under Walker's command was credited with the destruction of 23 U-boats, making it, by a considerable margin, the most successful anti-submarine unit fielded by any navy during the Second World War. Walker himself continued in active command right through the D-Day landings in June 1944, screening the invasion fleet from U-boat interference for 2 solid weeks without a single German submarine managing to break through his patrol line. He never significantly slowed down or took the extended rest his exhausted state by that point clearly called for. In July 1944, barely a month after D-Day, Walker suffered a fatal stroke, almost certainly a consequence of years of continuous high-pressure command at sea without meaningful respite. He was given a funeral procession through Liverpool watched by enormous crowds, before being buried at sea in the waters he had spent the last 2 years of his life defending. It was a bitter irony that the son of the Royal Navy's most successful U-boat hunter had been lost the previous year, not to a U-boat but aboard a British submarine, HMS Parthian, sunk in the Mediterranean. A loss Walker learned of shortly after one of his own group's earlier successes against the very branch of warfare that had claimed his son. There was nothing about 6 modest sloops, armed with the same depth charges every other escort ship in the Royal Navy carried, that explained how they came to sink 6 U-boats in under a month. What made the difference was a captain the Navy had once considered unremarkable enough to overlook, who took an ordinary weapon and built an entirely new way of using it, one built on trust between separate crews, discipline over the radio, and the patience to creep forward blind, rather than announce an attack early. 6 kills in 27 days, 3 of them in a single 16-hour stretch, came not from a better weapon, but from a better way of aiming the one the Navy already had.